and welcome to the Extra Life Game Jam. Woo! Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I see that there's some standing room action going on in the back, but there's seats action going on in the front. So if you're interested in sitting for the next 2 hours, there is room. There's some spots right there. There's a spot there. There's some spots in the middle. Make new friends. It'll be a good time. Yeah, thanks for coming out tonight. We're going to have some great speakers and introduce you all to the cause that this event is in support of. Before we get into all that, though, I just want to acknowledge that Studio Lab XR, the space that we are gathering today, is located on Treaty 1 territory and the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota Oyate, Denisoulene, and Nehethawak nations, and on the traditional homeland of the Red River Métis Nation. If you don't know me, my name is June Paget, and I'm a community coordinator for the Winnipeg Game Collective. We're very excited to be hosting our first Extra Life Game Jam, raising awareness and support for the Children's Hospital Foundation of Manitoba through Extra Life. If you don't know the, oh no, why didn't it change? Oh, cool, great. If you aren't familiar with the Winnipeg Game Collective, I don't know how you found out about this event, but I'm glad you're here anyway. We're a game development community representing programmers, designers, artists, musicians, and other related fields based in Manitoba, Canada. The collective promotes the discipline of game development to all members of the community, regardless of experience, in a supportive, collaborative, and inclusive environment. We run meetups, game jams like this one, and standalone speaker evenings and postmortems, things like that. If you're interested in hearing more about events like that, the QR code there is for our Discord. You can join that, get all the info for everything coming up. Next, I'd like to thank New Media Manitoba and Studio Lab XR for being our generous hosts for the weekend. I believe Rubab is somewhere and is going to come up and say a few words on behalf of New Media Manitoba.
By no means I'm going to bore you. I just want to welcome all of you to the Extra Life Game Jam and New Media Manitoba Virtual Production Lab, Studio Lab XR. We can clap up. We are so happy, formally, we are so happy to have you here and also to have Game Collective in Manitoba's IDM landscape, just given the fact that we all are here. The industry is growing, so this just adds up to everything. I am Rabab, formally, and I'm also membership and engagement lead with New Media Manitoba. So we are pleased to host you for this whole weekend. That also means that from bathroom keys to a walk out of the building, I'm your person. And while you're at the space today and tomorrow and on Sunday, I will just request you to be respectful of the space, but also make yourself at home. Just a few housekeeping things. Bathroom access needs fob. I have those. There will be a few doors while you're leaving the space today that will be closed, so I can help you navigate getting out of the building and coming back in. Enjoy your weekend. It's nice to have all of you over here.
All right. I don't know why this is being a little slow on the slide changing, but next I'm going to say a few words on behalf of Andrew Ferris, who's the program manager for the Children's Hospital of Manitoba. The Children's Hospital Foundation of Manitoba supports the HSC Children's Hospital, which oversees over 140,000 kids every single year. Their mission is to improve the health of children everywhere by inspiring our community to support excellence in child health care and child health care research. In June of 2022, the CHFM launched Manitoba's largest ever donor-driven fundraising campaign in support of child's health. The Better Futures $750 million campaign was just completed, raising over $86 million to support 3 strategic priorities: critical infrastructure and facilities, leading-edge pediatric research, and innovative programming. This year, a large focus of fundraising will be to support specialized medical equipment for pediatric surgery. Over 5,000 procedures happening every year, or happen every year. So thank you very much to them. And our final group involved in this event is Extra Life themselves. I'm going to invite Kirk and Graham up to say a few words on behalf of Extra Life.
Thank you, everybody, for having us. Now, how many people here have heard of Extra Life before? Raise hands. Oh, good. We're doing a good job.
Yeah, there you go.
So for those of you who haven't heard of Extra Life before, Extra Life is a gaming marathon that takes place every single year that raises money for children's hospitals all across North America. It's been running since 2008.
Yes.
Okay, good. Good on my metrics. Been running since 2008, and since then, around 300,000 gamers have raised almost $300 million for children's hospitals in Canada and the U.S. And locally here in Manitoba, we've had around 500 gamers who this year are on the cusp of breaking $1 million fundraised for the hospital over the last decade alone. So, yes, applause for the decade. Woo! So the way Extra Life works is you sign up online. It's the same way any other peer-to-peer fundraiser would work. You get your friends involved, reach out to family, your employer, anything like that for donations, and collect donations and matching. 100% of everything you collect goes straight to the Children's Hospital, because Extra Life is a program from the Children's Miracle Network. And then in return, there's a bunch of really cool swag and a bunch of other stuff that comes out, and you get to play games for 24 hours straight, or however long you're crazy enough to do. I did 96 hours one year. It's not fun.
Would not recommend.
Do not recommend. It was terrible. But that money goes to support a lot of different things at the Children's Hospital. The money goes into what's called unrestricted funds. So that can be used for anything from helping to pay for surgeries or healthcare, all the way to running the radio and TV station that are in-house, buying gaming consoles and games, internet, whatever it is and whatever it takes to help kids' health. So Kirk and I are going to take a quick minute and just talk about our own personal experiences of how we got involved with Extra Life. So for myself, in grade 11, I was diagnosed with a cyst in my jaw that only about 5 or 6 people a year are diagnosed with, where it was starting to eat away at the actual bone in my jaw and make it paper thin. I underwent a 14-hour jaw surgery at the Children's Hospital between 2 different surgeons who had to trade off halfway through the surgery, and then had my jaw wired shut for 12 weeks afterwards, where I couldn't eat or drink anything that wasn't liquid. Do not recommend it. So there's a lot of things to not recommend. But in that time and through countless follow-ups over the last over 5 years after, I was going through multiple different programs at the Children's Hospital, and one of the things I can remember is being in hospital where I had to stay for 5 days post-surgery. The one thing that was there to help comfort and get used to now having my jaw wired shut and everything else, it was the video games and everything else they had, where they could just wheel it right into your room, and it helps take the kid's mind off of everything they're going through and just helps them be a kid again. So, pass it to Kirk for his story.
Yeah, so mine's a little less intense than Graham's, but back when I was in about grade 8 or so, I had to go into the Children's Hospital for ruptured appendix and ended up spending a little over a week there, which really was, compared to jaw surgery, was not that bad. But one of the things I also do remember about my stay in the Children's Hospital was how nice it was to have the games room right across the hall from us. When my brother came to visit me, we'd go over there and play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on the N64, which was always a good time. But the point of this really show that, like, no matter what your story is or sort of, what sort of games you enjoy or whatever, everyone can make a difference and make a difference for Extra Life itself.
I forgot to mention, it's not just video games. I forgot that part of the pitch. Yeah. My bad. So for Extra Life, it's anything that's a game. So over the years, it started off as video games, but it's evolved over the years now to encompass anything from board games, card games. Somebody played tag and playground games for an entire 24 hours once. That was weird. Yeah. But anything that you like to do and take something you're already passionate about and take that opportunity to just have fun and embrace your inner kid. As the way we explain it to people is when you're participating in Extra Life, you're taking the place of a kid who might not have that opportunity right now, where while they're undergoing surgery or treatment at the children's hospital or anything like that, you're able to fill in for them temporarily, have fun, embrace your inner kid, and just enjoy yourself. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you very, very much for fundraising for the Children's Hospital. And I can't wait to see the games you guys create this weekend.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions about Extra Life, there's a flyer with our information at the back or business cards. Feel free to grab one.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you're like, wow, this sounds like an amazing mission and I'd like to support it with my hard-earned money, my cash dollars, there's a QR code. Once again, you can use that to go to the Winnipeg Game Collective's like Extra Life page, where you'll be able to donate through the team, and then it'll go right to Manitoba Children's Hospitals, which is great. If you don't have your phone on you right now, or your hard-earned dollars are like somewhere not in this building, then the link will be also available in the Winnipeg Game Jam event Discord, so you can find that there as well. Moving right along to the schedule for the weekend. So right now we're somewhere in the event starts section, which happened after doors open. Speaker evening stuff. We'll have a short intermission today around 7 p.m. No jamming is happening today, unlike some other jams. So if you're expecting to jam today, I'm sorry. But we'll be getting out of here after the speakers wrap up. But then Saturday, all day jamming. 10 a.m. doors open here. We'll be having a matchmaking session at 11. So if you're somebody who maybe doesn't know very many people yet who are here, is looking to get joined up with a group, or you have a group already, but you're like, we could use an extra artist, we could use an extra writer, an extra programmer, that session will be for you. We have a form that is also up on the Discord that you can fill out in advance of that matchmaking session. That just helps us make everything flow super smoothly there. So if that sounds interesting to you, find that form. If you can't find it, tag admins and we'll help you find it. And then 11 a.m. the matchmaking session will happen. 10 a.m. doors close, or 10 p.m. doors close. And then Sunday, 10 a.m. doors open again. 6 p.m. is the showcase. That's where you get to show off the cool thing you made. We'll be having everybody gathering. I don't think we'll be here. I think we'll be at the other end of the room for that one. But you get to show off the game you made, whether it's finished or not, whether it's good or not. Most of them aren't. Some of them are, and it's great. But lots of them aren't, and there's still lots of fun to see. So no matter what you accomplish this weekend, you should definitely participate in the showcase because it'll be an awesome time. You'll get to see everything everybody else made. It'll be good. Yeah, before we get into our speakers proper, I'm going to see if I can fix this issue where I have to keep hitting the Alt-Tab button to get it to advance to the next slide, because I don't think our speakers will like that. So I'm going to take a 1-minute break to do that, and then we'll be right back. That was faster than anticipated. All right, our first speaker for the evening. Graham is a multidisciplinary game developer and longtime jam enthusiast. He builds playful VR experiences as the gameplay director for Alchemy Labs, and as an independent developer, he's assembled dozens of small titles in varying genres and styles. He loves using games as a way to create and explore new worlds, and he's standing right behind me, isn't he? I'm sorry. All right, everybody welcome Graham. So you can just use the arrow keys, and then this, your microphone, you can put it on if you want, or just hold it.
Okay, I'm just going to hold it. Okay, hey everybody. All right, yeah, I will get started. So, yeah, one of the reasons I love game jams is because I just enjoy learning how to build things quickly and more effectively. Because building games is complicated. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and a really common piece of advice that people give and receive all the time is to just keep it simple, limit the scope of your game. Going to do that, it's still not easy to actually do it. Because it's fun to be ambitious. It's fun to give ourselves more to do than we can possibly hope to achieve in a weekend. And it's fun to just dream big and try to make something incredible. But we're kind of being unfair with ourselves when we do that, because it's all too easy to get overambitious and basically set ourselves up to fail, which can be fun, but it's not really being fair to ourselves. So all I want to do for the next like 10 minutes or so is just look at development in a slightly different way and try to open up our minds a bit to think about how we can try to be more fair to ourselves throughout the development process. So for the sake of this talk, let's say that when we're building a game, what's really happening is that our imaginary friend here is building a castle for us. And this isn't just anybody. This is a real, fake, imaginary friend. His name is Simon. His legal name is Simon Scopewell. And he is a living being that's going to have to build this thing for us. So the castle that we decide we're going to make has to be built up brick by brick, and Simon's the one who's going to do it. So it's kind of easy to make problems for ourselves, but let's try to go easy on Simon because he's a good guy. He just likes building castles. We don't want to make life too difficult for him for no reason. So let's figure out how we can kind of treat him fairly. Games and castles start out as nothing. Every time we add an idea or a feature or a bit of code to our game, that's some big heavy piece of stone that poor Simon has to go find. He has to pick it up. He has to carry it over to the build site. It takes time and it takes effort, and there's only so much time and effort available to go around in a weekend. So if Simon spends all of Saturday running back and forth with heavy bricks, not only is he going to be exhausted, but we're going to end up with a foundation of something that he just can't finish on Sunday. So kind of the first thing we need to do is make sure that we're not asking Simon to move more than he needs to. If you've seen a cool castle before, you've seen pictures of something before, and you say, oh, I want to make something just like that, stop and think about all the parts that went into it. All the ornate and sort of nice flourishy bits that you see on the surface, they have to be held up by something, right? They have to be supported by huge amounts of massive stones underneath. So just imagine poor Simon picking up each one of those stones and moving them into place one by one. And just think, was it worth it? Is each element in your game that you can see worth the cost of all the supporting elements that it requires? But okay, what if you really want to build something just like the big fantasy Cinderella castle that you have in your mind? You need to figure out a way to capture what you love about it using fewer pieces. So you ask yourself, which parts are important? Which can you let go of? What is it about this thing that appeals to you? Is it the general shape of it or one of the details? And kind of understanding why you like a more complicated reference is the key to being able to actually use it instead of just getting tripped up by it. So think about how you'd explain it to Simon. If while the two of you are kind of planning this build, like what do you bring up in that conversation? How would you help him understand why you want it to be built that way? How can you justify this stuff? Justify the things that you're asking for? Like when you talk about your favorite games, listen to yourself and think about like, what do you mention first? Which things are really important to communicate and which things do you leave till later? If you do try to copy something huge and complicated and you're missing any of the key pieces, it's probably just going to fall apart. More complication means more things that can go wrong. And Simon is only one person. So we're asking him to dig and lift and carry and do all this stuff all weekend. He's not going to have much time for like OSHA standards and quality testing or even like proper plans, most likely. So let's not ask him to do something that requires exact measurements or like for him to get up on a rickety ladder. We're in a hurry. We need something sturdy. So let's just focus on that. You want players to focus on what your game is, not what's missing from it. So don't build in a way that a missing piece is going to compromise the whole thing. Make something that stands up on its own no matter what. Even if your castle is basically a cube, it can still protect you. You can still hide behind it. It can still host visitors. You can still climb on top and enjoy a beautiful view. It's worthwhile no matter how simple it is. But no, that's boring, you say. I have a super unique idea for something like unlike any other castle that's ever been made before. So you tell Simon about it, and of course he has no experience building anything like that. Your castle is going to be one of a kind, yeah, everybody's going to be really impressed, but poor Simon is going to have to carve out all these completely bespoke pieces. He might even need some new tools to do it that he's going to have to develop, and that takes time. So after he's done with this like centerpiece, is he going to have time to stack up everything else around it? Both of these castles center on a big complicated centerpiece. The orange one relies on numerous other pieces propping it up, otherwise it just wouldn't stand at all and it wouldn't work. But the green one is a weird shape too. It's just that it stands on its own and it's complemented by the pieces that have been added to it. So if you're asking Simon to make something really unique and special, you should probably talk about that up front so he can plan for it. You should make sure he has time to carve it out and build the rest of the structure. It's probably going to be easiest if you make that weird thing your foundation, start with that, and then you might have time to stack up some other stuff on top of it, but that should always be done to complement what you're already making as your unique base. Don't make it so that your custom part is completely dependent on other things that you might not have time for. If your goal really is just to make something that looks unique, remember that uniqueness doesn't always just come from the structure. If you leave Simon some time to take breaks, he's going to be able to wander around the grounds and find ways to decorate the thing. Put up some banners, give them a special design, plant some seeds in the garden, right? This is not what we think of as like building a castle, but it can make it look different than the one next door. Put up some lighting to throw cool shadows and turn that basic shape into something that reads as more complicated than it is. Compared to lugging bricks and stones around, decorations are a lot easier for Simon to adjust and find the right positioning. And this means it's safer to leave this kind of stuff until the very end, right? You don't want to put up banners and then realize you've misplaced a wall and you have to take everything down, change the wall, and put it back up again. So you save that polish for once the structure is set and once you can be confident that it's going to complement the thing that you have underneath. You can change a lot about how your castle is perceived by how you choose to decorate, what you choose to prioritize. And even beyond the design of it, the places that Simon spends more time on will show. But a castle is more than just rocks and decorations. It's kind of art that does something, right? It serves a function. Maybe it's for defense, maybe it's to host visitors. Depending on the purpose, even a simple design can serve perfectly well. So the purpose of your castle is the strongest determination of how it's going to be remembered. If you have purpose in mind from the beginning, all of your conversations with Simon throughout are going to be influenced by that idea, even if it's subconsciously, and your project is going to have a sense of consistency. So know what your game is about. It can be really simple, but you need to decide, you need to be clear, and you need to stick with that throughout. If this was a castle hundreds of years from now when it's a ruin, what are people going to think about it, right? Are they going to think, oh, that castle was so ambitious that even though it was never finished, I'm impressed by the idea of it. I love hearing the story because its construction was so inspiring. Or, oh, this thing was so well built, they just don't make them like this anymore. Like, the craftsmanship is incredible even though it's simple. Or, oh, this castle was so unique, and even just from the parts that are left, you can tell the builder had a vision unlike any other, and it's really different from things from that time. Do any of those memories like appeal to you? What do you want people to remember after they've played your game? Obviously not hundreds of years from now, but like next week, tomorrow, what do you want them to be left with? Is it a feeling or like a certain experience, a memory of a certain moment that happened? And then from there, what's the best use of Simon's time in order to make that happen? So we have a lot to ask of this little guy over the course of the weekend. So I implore you just to be nice to him. Regardless of how capable, ambitious, and flawless you are, think about whether Simon can handle it. Maybe you don't care, but remember that'll also be part of the story of your castle. Like years from now, when people look back at those ruins, are they going to say like, oh yeah, it's beautiful, but don't look up the story behind it. It's pretty tragic. Poor Simon Scopewell hurt his back building that thing, and he was never the same. That's probably not what you want people to remember, right? So for the extra life jam, like we're thinking about compassion as well as creativity. So even though Simon is made up, let's try to be good to him, try to understand the difficulties he faces, and work with him, not against him. You can even talk to him in your mind is okay. Each time you're going to add or change something about your game, imagine you actually have to tell Simon about it, and think about whether you feel guilty about asking him to do so much, right? How can you ask things of him fairly? What do you think he'd say? Is what you're proposing going to be effective and actually be a good use of time and energy? And be open to suggestions. You might have options that change your castle a little bit, but they make Simon's life way easier in exchange. And that kind of trade-off is an important part of collaboration with anybody. Your castle is never going to look exactly the way it does in your head, but the one that Simon builds is going to be real, and it's going to be driven by that same purpose. So be passionate about the purpose, not the blueprint, and trust your friends, real or imaginary, to help you in that pursuit. So let's do our best to kind of be fair to each other and to ourselves, and we can all build something special. Thanks for listening.
Hey. All right, thank you so much, Graham. Up next, our next speaker, Matthew. A lifelong gamer, Matthew spends his days working on AAA titles and his evenings and weekends developing his own indie titles. He has a passion for developing video games as an artistic medium and works to encourage the involvement of a diversity of voices and experiences in the field. Everybody welcome him to the stage.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Just want to start by saying thanks to the organizers. This game community is so awesome to be a part of, and it's so awesome that we get events like this. It's even more awesome when we get to do game jams in support of things like Extra Life. So this is an awesome event. I just want to give a shout out to Dan and June and all the people who volunteer their time in order to make this happen. It's truly great and incredible. So yeah, let's get started. So for those of you who I haven't had the chance to meet yet, my name is Matthew Pluff. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a Métis game developer here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. For the past 6 years, I've been working for Ubisoft on games like Roller Champions and R6 Mobile. And then in my spare time on evenings and weekends, I keep making games, a bunch of indie titles in game jams and on my own projects under the title Level Zero Games. So today I want to talk about my fears in game dev. I thought this would be an interesting topic for a couple reasons. First of all, I think it's good to talk about fears because it kind of takes away their power when you kind of say them out loud and talk about them out in the open. And I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that, even though I've been doing this for 6 years and I work for professional game studio, there's still things about this that scare me. And I just wanted to kind of talk about those and maybe talk about some of the techniques that I've used in order to deal with them. And hopefully, if you're experiencing any of these fears, maybe you'll come away with a few tips or tricks that you can use to deal with them. So let's get started. My top 5 fears in game dev. Number 1, I'm not a game developer. This is, you can take the title game developer and kind of swap it in for anything that you feel like, oh, I'm just not, I don't have the experience, I don't have the skills in order to do this. Should I be here? Is someone going to find out? Am I a fraud? So this whole type of thing, unfortunately, it's very common in the industry. It's called imposter syndrome. And it's so common that even at Ubisoft, where we have hugely talented developers who have been hired in from around the world to come work here, you still see it all over the place. I've met developers who are 20 years in the business and they still suffer from imposter syndrome. So there's not really a way to kind of solve it, but there definitely is some ways to manage it. One of the first ways to manage it that I found is kind of what we're already doing here. Get involved in this community. I mean, if you feel like you're not a game developer, just look around at this awesome and diverse group of people we have here. There is no one template that is what a game developer is. We're all unique. We all bring our own combination of unique experiences and things that make you are who you are, and bringing that to a game is something special. You have value, and your contribution to video games has value no matter what that is, no matter what you're bringing to games. So it's already great that you're getting involved in this community and can kind of help you that way. Another thing that really helps with this is just being kind to yourself. I know I'm my own harshest critic. The things I say to myself about what I'm doing, I would never say to another person because that would just come off as mean and rude. But when it comes to myself, I will totally berate myself and be angry with myself about things I've done. So just remember to be kind to yourself. And we're all on a journey, right? At Ubisoft, when a new dev joins, to them, I'm a senior dev. But to some of the other devs there, I'm a total junior. So we're all on a path, and we all get there faster if we all help each other out. So be kind to yourself and then radiate that kindness to others. When you're not feeling that imposter syndrome, have sympathy for those people who are and help them out. All right, fear number 2, getting started is overwhelming. So you're starting, we're all starting a game jam. You're sitting there, you haven't got the project started yet, and there's just so much stuff to choose, so many things to pick. What game engine am I going to do? What type of game am I going to do? What art am I going to use? What music am I going to use? There's a litany of decisions to be made. This is often called decision paralysis. It's just that there's so many options to pick from, and it's impossible to kind of hold them all in your head and balance them critically. So I think the important thing to do is not panic. Just take a deep breath and pick a lane, because no matter what decision you make, you're going to learn a lot. And if you make the wrong decision, you're just going to be that much more prepared to make the right decision next time. The important thing is to not let decision paralysis stall you from making the game, because even a bad game complete is worth 1,000 times more than the perfect game that only exists in your head. Another good way to tackle the feeling of being overwhelmed is to scope down. We just heard Graham's a great talk about talking about scope, and it's a good idea to kind of just pare down your idea if you're getting overwhelmed by it. Either just strip down some mechanics, or maybe just kind of make more of a vertical slice of the game. Or you can even do this in terms of the game jam itself. You can just pick I'm only going to work on programming, or I'm only going to work on game design, or I'm only going to work on art this time. And then that way you can scope down the amount of decisions you have to make, and it can be a lot less overwhelming. If scoping down isn't an option, either your idea is just what it is and has to stay there, and you're still overwhelmed by the amount of decisions you have to make, then you just got to start breaking it down. You got to take those tasks that are overwhelming you and break them down into pieces that you can accomplish. If those broken down pieces still feel too big, just keep breaking them down. Just keep breaking it down until you get down to actionable items that you can take immediate action on. At that point, you'll have a long list of items. Might be an overwhelmingly long list, but at least then you can start taking action on it. And once you start getting that forward momentum, you'll be able to get over that feeling of being overwhelmed, and then you'll start to get forward traction. All right. Oop, I clicked on something. Here we go. Okay. So next up, I don't know how to do blank. So there's lots of stuff in game dev, right? There's music, there's art, there's animation, there's programming, there's so much stuff to do. No one knows everything 100%, and so there's always going to be stuff that you're running into that you need for your game, but you don't know how to do. So there's basically two ways to tackle this. One is to do it yourself. I'm a compo game jammer, so I do everything myself. Game art, game design, programming, everything. I touch everything. And I like it that way because it gives me a chance to do things that I don't normally do. I'm not the greatest artist, but I like to flex those muscles on occasion. I'm not really a good composer, but I like to play around with that sometimes. So for me, when I come across something that I haven't done before, I'm like, yes, challenge. I get to try this out and learn something new and develop my skills. So that's not the favored choice for everyone. Some people are like, no, I'm a programmer. I just want someone else to do art. In that case, you're going to have to find someone to do it for you. In which case, again, huge community of people here who are really talented and really enthusiastic and passionate about game development. There's that meetup tomorrow in order to for matchmaking. So yeah, just reach out and talk to people in the community and find someone who wants to do the thing that you need being done. All right, fear number 4. I don't have any ideas. This can be a problem. You're sitting down, you're like, okay, I know what game engine I'm going to do. I just need an idea for a game. And you're staring at that blank piece of paper, and just nothing's coming up. You're just beating your head against the wall, coming up with an idea, trying to come up with an idea. So what do you do in that scenario? So the solution I'm going to suggest is probably going to surprise no one. It's brainstorming. I know you're like, oh, come up with ideas. Very smart, right? But the thing I want to emphasize here is that brainstorming is really a skill. It's not just like, oh, some people are creative and they can brainstorm stuff and some people can't. It's a matter of practicing that. I used to be a filmmaker, and when I was a filmmaker, one of the things I did is I wanted to be able to come up with better ideas for scripts and stuff. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to take half an hour each day and just brainstorm for half an hour every day. And I would just write down all the ideas I could. And the more I continued to do it, the better I got at it, and the more ideas that would come out of it, and the more I liked the quality of the ideas that were coming out. So yeah, the other advantage of doing this consistently is that then you suddenly have a reservoir of ideas to go back to. So if you're on one of those days where you're just not having any creative juice and it's not coming to you, you can refer back to those pile of creative ideas, and it can really help you. So that sounds great, you say, but I haven't been practicing brainstorming, and I'm about to enter a jam, and I still don't have an idea. Is there anything you can do to help? And at that point, I would say derive from the classics. So I think you can take kind of works that exist as more or less of a starting point and then build from there. This is something I did in one of my game jam projects. I took the game of Pong and just kind of twisted it a bit. So I kind of made it vertical, and this game isn't great or anything like that, but I learned a ton in that process. Both replicating a game that already exists, you learn a ton doing that, and then tweaking game elements of that, you also learn a lot about not only how those choices that they made in the original game affect game feel, but how the choices that you're making affect game feel. So if you recreate Mario Brothers and change the way that the jump mechanic works, you'll really see how that factors into the game and how that it contributes to game feel. So I think in a game jam context, this is totally like a legitimate way to kind of build a game, right? Just kind of be like, okay, I'm going to make like Mario Brothers, but I'm going to tweak all the enemies and change all this stuff. Don't rip off people's ideas, obviously, but taking that as taking something that exists as a creative starting point can be a good point in order to break off and then kind of build your own thing. Right, fear number 5. The game I'm making is bad. So no one ever sets out to make a bad video game, but bad video games exist. So there's a chance you could be making one. And that's a little bit scary because we're investing a lot of time and effort into making these games, and no one wants to make a bad game. So first off, I have some bad news. Probably you're right. The game is probably going to be bad. That happens a lot, but it's nothing to worry about. Again, going back to filmmaking, there's a quote by Robert Rodriguez, and he said that every filmmaker has 10 bad films in them. And that was his belief, and so in his mind, he had to start making films so he could get those 10 bad films out of his system, and then he could start making good films. And that really resonates with me. It's not that I think we all have 10 bad films in us or anything like that, but I think it speaks to the importance of experience and practice in developing your skills as an artist, right? And so maybe, you know, the first Game Jam game you make isn't that great, doesn't turn out the way you want, it's not, you know, the next Minecraft. But you know what, it's still a building block, and then the next game you make is even better than that, and the next game you make is even better than that, and you can grow like that. This is the other quote I think about that a lot with this, is that it's important that, you know, we look at this as a process of development and growth, right? Games exist as their own like self-contained entity. Like at the end of this, you'll have your game project that exists on its own, but it's also part of that larger conversation of your own development. So if you kind of break out of that like black and white success fail kind of mentality and just look at it as the experience and the development, you never really fail because you're always learning and developing. Yeah. Oh, and so we still don't want to make bad games, right? So there's still ways to kind of avoid that. And one of the ways to avoid that is, you know, again, this community that we have here. We're all game developers. We're all very game-educated people. Playtest. Playtest early. Playtest often. Get people to play your game. And when you do playtest your game, don't give, just let people play the game. Just hand them the controller and let them play it. Don't give them a big, long preamble of what the game is and how the controls work and all this stuff. Just give them the controller and see what they do. Because you'll learn so much more about your game that way. You'll challenge all your assumptions of how you expect people to interact with your game, and you'll see what people actually do. So you'll learn so much. So, and the last thing I'll say about playtesting is that also just take it with a grain of salt, because it is just everyone's opinion. So if someone suggests something that you don't like, don't feel like you need to implement it, but also don't just disregard that opinion. Sometimes being able to define what you like in the face of like what you don't want will really help define what you're trying to do, right? So don't discard feedback, but also don't feel like you need to incorporate it just because someone offered you your opinion about something. All right, so in conclusion, I just want to reiterate that everyone here is awesome for participating in this game jam. I'm so excited to make games with all you guys this weekend, and I'm so excited to look forward to the showcase when we get to all play each other's games and celebrate this awesome community. That is it for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. All right, our last speaker before our intermission is Tamara. Tamara is an Unreal Engine Silver authorized partner with Epic Games. They provide industry training for virtual production and game development with clients across North America. Tamara recently was a CG lead and technical art with CG Pro for a VR cinematic experience, Meditate Like a Dolphin. That sounds pretty cool. They are passionate about supporting the community and opening opportunities for those beginning their journey in the industry. Everyone, please welcome Tamara. I'm going to give you this to hold.
Okay.
And switch everything over so we can do it in PowerPoint.
Amazing.
Incredible. I think I deleted a lot of things. I was trying to get it to go into Google Slides when I was like that. I'm just going to open it again.
I blame my gifts. They're so big.
Very much so. Okay, you should be good.
Awesome. Everybody hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Amazing. So I'm thrilled to be talking to you all today about a cinematic approach to game development and talking about lights, camera, and post-processing. So to start things off, how can film drive the creative decisions for game development? How can we take our inspirations of film and bring it into developing a really cool game over the course of this weekend? Well, today we're going to be talking about lighting. The types of lighting like soft lights, hard lights, a highlight, a low light, and playing with silhouettes, as well as camera. We can look at different shot types, lenses, and compositions from our favorite films or TV shows. And as well, color is a big one. So looking at saturated, warm, cool, and mixed type of media. So I'm going to show you some resources that are going to take these points in the creative and visual design of your game and how you can implement film terms and techniques into game engines. So we're going to start things off with some resources for look development and how you can begin building mood boards, gaining inspiration to bring these into the game engine that you want to work in. So I want to bring up Shot Deck, which I'm obsessed with. Shot Deck is a cinematic image database. And what's great about it is you can search any type of shot that is within their database, and they provide a massive library, as well as on the left-hand side, they will have filters. You can filter from time of day, shot type, color. So you kind of get what I'm getting at here, right? We have something that we can already utilize based on those points that I was bringing out. And it also will have detailed information that we can easily transfer into game engines. So to kind of detail here, I'm clicking on a particular shot in Shot Deck on the bottom GIF at the bottom right-hand corner here, and there's information that Shot Deck provides that's going to help me recompose that scene into my gaming engine and allow me to create these ideas. So again, as I'm mentioning here, this is a great starting point for planning the overall mood and atmosphere of your game. Can also bring up ideas of gameplay and how to implement this as well. So another resource I want to bring up is physically based. And this is more so if you're really aiming for more of that photoreal, truly emulating film. So again, this is another database, but mostly for physically based values for CG artists. And what I love about physically based is it will also, for the materials and as well the lighting, there is Unity and Unreal snippets that you can grab and just paste into the engine. So it's really cool that we're able to use this database, and it's very quick and efficient to bring that in. But what I really personally like is their cameras. Based on Shot Deck, how we're able to pull camera information from that database, we can then use physically based to find a camera that matches our shot and bring that directly in engine as well. Another thing I want to bring up is lookup tables. Again, this is very film centric, but again, can be very valuable in terms of color correction and perhaps being a game mechanic that you implement in your game. If you're not sure what a lookup table is, again, it's mainly used for color correction, but it can also be a great way to change the overall look of your game, as well as incorporate into mechanics, as I mentioned earlier. But something I want to mention as well, what you can do is, for example, have a trigger volume that triggers this change and loads up a lookup table. Again, if you're using Unreal Engine, they do have documentation on how you can create your own lookup table. If there's anybody in this room that is familiar with Photoshop and making adjustments to your images, you can bring that into a LUT and directly in Engine as well. So there's a lot of multidisciplinary skills that you can use to bring this to life. So now let's talk about bringing this into Engine. So we know where we can find info on camera, color, and lighting. How does this all fit into Unreal Engine? Well, I'm going to first talk about the photoreal, and then I'll bring up a more stylized approach as well. So for my photoreal example, what I'm going to be mentioning here is less lights equals better lighting. You may be tempted to throw in a million lights into your scene, but again, really paying attention to what your lighting is doing in your scene is going to be, making it a lot more efficient as well. Using reference is really important as well. So here I'm taking a shot from The Matrix, and I found, fun fact, they did Decagon Studios did a pack, an entire scene for the Matrix demo. So I wanted to take this asset pack and see if I can recreate this scene and use all the tools at hand to recreate this in Unreal Engine. And some of the key words that I wanted to keep in mind when it comes to lighting is exactly what I pulled from Shot Deck. So thinking about that cool, desaturated, there's a lot of greens, blues, but most importantly, it's very soft light. The shadows are very soft and there's no hard shadowing in the reference image that I'm pulling. So lighting an engine, what does this look like? Well, one of the things I want to talk about is not so much the amount of light that you're bringing into a scene, but how you are shaping the light and blocking the light in your scene. So blocking light is just as important as how much light is in your scene. It can really develop the mood and feelings that you're going for, as well can be a way to direct the player into a more into where they need to go to continue their journey in their game. As well, another point I bring here in the second GIF is every light should have a purpose, whether it's filling the room with light, it's a key light focusing on a specific area, perhaps it's providing more edge light so the player can also read the room quite easily and navigate around it. If you notice a light is not making a difference in your scene, delete it, get rid of it, you don't need it there. And as well, for anyone that is maybe familiar with Unreal Engine or just starting off, some of the important properties that you want to look in your lighting is the attenuation radius. That's going to control how much of an influence your light will have. The smaller it is, the more compact and harsh it will be. And the larger the attenuation radius, the more influence it will have on your scene. As well, you'll want to pay attention to the source width and height, and in other actors, it'll be the source radius. So that'll influence the hard and soft shadows of your lighting. Looking at our camera, again, using your knowledge of real-world cameras is going to come really handy, especially in Unreal Engine, because we can translate everything from shot deck into the engine as well. So important settings that I want you to keep in mind are the film back, lens settings, and crop settings. So here in this particular GIF, or pardon me, this image, I've just highlighted some of the modified properties that I've changed to influence the overall composition. So we can see in this image, I'm using the same film back and lens settings that I'm referencing from shot deck, but sometimes the engine isn't that smart. And so sometimes we have to use our own creative eye to match the composition that we're going for, as well as what the crop is doing here is it's matching. We can see there's two black bars above the image. That is making the aspect ratio of our image the same cropping style that we saw in shot deck. So if you want to be really specific, that's what those crop settings are for. And going over post-processing, probably one of my favorite features in color correcting in the engine. So again, this is to overall alter and enhance the color of a light in a scene. But the thing is with Unreal, what I want to mention here is you don't want to color all of your lights and then go to town with your post-processing. If you are planning to color grade, you want to keep your lighting at neutral values. This is going to make sure that you're able to color correct correctly, because if all of your lights are, say, green and pink and purple, and then you're trying to color correct and have an overall tone in your scene, it's not going to work out so well. Another thing with dealing with realism in Unreal and with the post-process volume is tone mapping. So you don't need to be an expert in, color grading and all of this, but tone mapping is just how the color is preserved from multiple formats and displays. But in Unreal, it's a great way to help control the shadows of our scene. And because if we were to just crank the contrast in our color correction, it's gonna look kind of muddy and bleh. So tone mapping is, again, another great way to influence those shadows and that contrast. But another one is exposure is really important. So if you're familiar with photography, exposure is going to determine, again, how light or dark a scene is. And again, with our real world camera, that's, again, various settings like our aperture, ISO, and pardon me, I'm losing my voice here. But the exposure in Unreal is also going to control, right, the exposure values of our scene. We want to be mindful that we're not over or underexposing our scene. So if you realize that things look really washed out and too bright, that means it's overexposed. And underexposed will mean your scene is too dark. So you want to maintain a nice balance of exposure when you're working in photorealism. Last but not least, I do want to talk about stylization in Unreal Engine. Now, the fun thing that I do love about stylization is rules can be bent. But again, taking that knowledge of film will help create a foundation for your scene. So for example, dealing with composition, color, and as well lighting is going to help direct the scene that I'm trying to create. But then I could begin to bend the rules and make things appear less photoreal. And materials matter here. So I was aiming for a more Disney Sleeping Beauty vibe with the scene that I was building. And what I was realizing is I wanted to create something that looked very flat and very 2D. So again, thinking about your specular, metallic, and roughness values, you want to really avoid having any shininess in your materials. So again, think very matte if you're aiming for that very flat 2D look. And as well, fake it. Use painted textures. If you can, paint in Photoshop, utilize this to your advantage. And even, for example, with the god rays that I made in the background, I just applied a emissive effect to fake god rays with my directional light because it's something that's not built in the engine. I had to make that myself. And I hope you enjoyed my talk about applying your amazing film knowledge now with game development, and I can't wait to see what kind of styles that you take from your inspirations into your games. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I do not talk much.
All right, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Rebecca Harrison is the founder and creative director of Flighty Felon Games, currently making Freeride, and a mother of two. So everybody, welcome Rebecca to the stage. You can either hold this or flip it.
Okay, can I just talk loud?
And that's for the people in the room.
Oh,
So
hello.
They won't hear you at all.
Okay,
Despite
then I will speak into the microphone. Okay. Okay, lovely. Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful day so far. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Yeah, that's me, Rebecca Harrison, and I will get to it with arrow keys now. So my talk today is about adding a little whimsy to your game and to your life. 'Cause I think that is the most important part of any game is whimsy, or more specifically, an extraordinary moment of delight. So I believe that is at the core of every game, is that, you're just, playing along, and then something really interesting happens. And then later on, when you're talking to like your friends about the game you played, you don't talk about, the hours of grinding or this or that. You talk about that one moment of delight. And that kind of is what comes to categorize and like define your game, is that one moment. And this comes up to my first prop, which is this can of buble that I opened earlier in the evening. So I opened it, and then under the little tab, it said, yo. And that I thought was really magical. I was not expecting it, and I thought it was whimsical. So that, I think, captures what I'm about to explain over about a lot more minutes than that. So who am I? I am Rebecca Harrison, studio founder and creative director, and several other things. That's my studio, Flighty Felon Games. So this is a montage of my game dev life. Before that, I was a dental hygienist, and then I did a backflip into this. But that one up there with the two birds is the first game I ever made for a game jam. So that was a lot of fun. And then all of these are jams that I've made here in the city. That's my son James, he's cool. And these are our two commercial games. SCP Doki Doki Anomaly, which is an SCP dating sim. I'm really proud of that one. It's actually really fun. And that's our game that we're working on right now, which is Freeride. So I make games, several games. But what do I know? How do I come upon this fabled game dev knowledge? So my game design mentor was Will Wright. He made several games that you might recognize. I was actually his art director in San Francisco for a couple of years. And so I just like sat there and listened to him. Like everything he said, I was like, tell me, tell me your secrets. And it was very interesting because everything he did in a game design sense went through this like filter of, but will I laugh while doing it? So like if there's a moment in a game that could have been like tee, then he would go for it. Like it didn't matter like what it was, like you'll see. Yeah, so and there was three main ways I've determined. But yeah, so yeah, this is his like thing that he'd always say. Make toys first, then the rest of the game. So if your gameplay is engaging enough that you're just doing it like da-da-da-da-da, like while you're testing, you're just like playing the game, you've got it. And you need to keep iterating until you've got it, whatever that is for you. And so yeah, so in other words, create systems which spark delight by searching for moments of surprise. So you'll know when you've got it. You'll know it because you'll be smiling at your screen and you'll be like, oh yeah, here we go. Now we're talking. But yeah, how do I add whimsy to my game, you ask? I have determined there are three ways. There's probably more, but situational, mechanics-driven, and narrative-driven. So situational whimsy. I believe this one is probably the easiest and the most doable in a game jam because it just requires like a fun premise. So basically take a familiar situation and turn it on its head in some way. And so I've got a couple examples from jam games that I've enjoyed throughout history. The first one is called Your Average Lift Experience. And it's literally just you and a guy in an elevator, and there's quick time events. And you're like, no, I will not press the button for you. And then he goes to press it, and you're like, handshake. And then you just stand there really awkwardly. And then it becomes more intense. And he's like trying to fight his way past you, and you're like swearing at each other, and you're doing these quick time events. And I remember this game years later. I was like, what would be a funny game to put in this presentation? And it was like this, like, you know, it looks very simple, but it was very memorable because it was just moment after moment of whimsy. Let's see, next one is Tongue-Tied, is another jam game where your tongue is stuck to a pole and you gotta like eat these orbs. And there's hijinks. There's like this saw at one point. He's like, oh god, it's cut through my tongue. Oh no, it fell off. It's like the premise of like having your tongue tied to a pole. I have no idea what the theme could possibly have been. But I really enjoyed this game, and I was like smiling the whole time because it was so dumb. Yeah, so that's one of those. This one was actually made by a local, Matt Welk, where you play as this dog, and you have to keep your owner alive despite their best efforts, and you have to like bark away at rats, but like when your owner goes down, you have to give them dog CPR. And it was really fun. It's actually a really good game. It's just all of these are on itch, by the way, for free. So if you want like a masterclass of like dumb games on itch, this is good material. Other dumb games on itch that I really enjoy and also have situational whimsy are How to Make a Cup of Tea. Has anybody played this game? Yay! It's because I showed it to you. It's literally exactly what it sounds like until it isn't. And the other one is A Firm Handshake, which is also the same kind of thing, where you just go up to someone and you shake their hand, and then it gets weird. But yeah, so like there's a lot of really fun experimental stuff on itch.io that like, I don't know, like ask me on Discord for game recommendations for this sort of stuff. They're always fun. But yeah, so that was the first kind of like way to like make a whimsical experience, is just like take a situation you know that's familiar to you in your life, whether that's like riding the bus or, you know, playing on the beach or making a video game, and then find some way to make it unexpected. And then your player will be like kind of going down that journey with you, where they're like, okay, yeah, we're doing this. that's interesting that you should do it that way. And they'll remember that. It's just that moment of whimsy that makes a game memorable. Mechanical whimsy. This is usually, in my experience, systems interacting in an unexpected way. So having mechanics that affect one another is a base tenet of game design anyways. So you have your one mechanic, you have your other mechanic. Let's say you're, Link in Breath of the Wild, and you've got your sword, and you can put it on the ground, and it's made out of metal. But there's also the electricity system where, like, you put your sword on something electric, it becomes electric, and then you can put your swords down, and you beat that one shrine that way by, like, having a wire of swords that are put together in that way. And I always remember that shrine because I was like, ha, I'm a genius, even though that was the one way that you could possibly beat it, and, like, everybody did it. But I felt smart, and that was important to me. But here's a couple of other ways I have noticed this in games. This is a game called Fallums, another jam game. The Tetris board is also, and then you can go down into, like, Tetris land. But, like, you're all, like, you see it, you're like, haha, that's funny. And that's all we can hope for as game designers, is that your player is sitting there and they, like, kind of, like, breathe out through their nose, like, that's it. You've made it. But yes, that's Fallums, one of the all-time greats. I had to bring it up. Has anybody here played Outer Wilds? Okay, you should play it. I know everybody says you should play it, but, like, you really should. So this is, like, the definition of mechanics-driven gameplay. The premise is you're like a little astronaut. You have a completely physics-simulated ship, and you have to explore this strange solar system, and it gets weird. But so here's one particularly memorable situation where two things come together in a very interesting way. So this is minor spoilers for Outer Wilds, okay? Minor spoilers. So there's this thing called the quantum moon. And you can never land on it because it's quantum, which means that it's only, like, stable when it's being observed. And so you fly up to it, and you go into its cloud layer, and then you're in space again because it stopped being observed. And so the way you actually eventually have to land there, and they trickle feed, like, clues at you, is you have to take a picture of it. Because you have this scout mechanic, which is entirely different, where you can shoot a scout into space that takes photos as it goes, and you can make sure you get a photo of the moon and then keep it open on your dashboard like that as you fly into the clouds, and then you can land on the planet. I always thought that was, like, the coolest moment out of a game with, like, a million cool moments. So, like, once again, play the game. And also, that's another example of a game that I really like its physics system. I'm a huge fan of physics-based games. I find that they just go a huge way to making a game more interesting in general. We're also, like, we're human beings. We really like to watch balls bounce. It's, like, part of us. We love moving objects and watching the moving objects interact in funny ways. So this is a really good GDC talk. I have no idea when it's from. It must have been from years ago. But it was about emergent storytelling in Slime Rancher, mostly due to their physics system. And so this was a clip from the talk where this guy had two pens. One pen had chickens, and one pen had slimes. And the slimes kept jumping into the chicken pen. And the guy, there's a streamer who's talking over the original video, and he's like, these slimes are intelligent, man! Like, they're jumping into the chicken pen, like, they've figured it out. But in actuality, the developer is like, yeah, so the slimes are sphere colliders, and they move towards chickens, and they jump every once in a while. So they were piling up, and the top one would just jump, and it would be moving towards the chicken. But it feels like they're like this zombie horde of pink slimes that are trying to get these poor chickens, when really the guy should probably just move the chickens. But that's and there's another layer to this later on in the talk where there are flying slimes, which can pick up a slime, but that slime also picks up the slime below it. So we have these columns of flying slimes, and that would just, like, they would just hover around, and the guy was losing it on stream. So, like, that's the kind of thing, like, when a mechanic can interact with other mechanics. So, like, the slimes are physics-based. They can jump. They like chickens. Things happen. And so this guy on the floor here is an example of that we'll get to later. And so the last way I'm going to talk about making whimsy, and this is probably the most difficult, in my opinion, because you have to be a really good writer, is narrative whimsy. It can still do it in a jam. I've seen it done. But a really good one is actually sports. Sports is really fun to watch sometimes. You know what I mean? But yeah, so sports. And like a really good story is like World Series comebacks. You know, you got your team, you got your guys, you're rooting for them, but they're losing. But then they start winning, and it's exciting. And that's what people like about sports, I think, among other things. But yeah, like games, sports is a lot of staring at a screen, waiting for something really exciting to happen. A moment of whimsy, if you will. And there are tools you can use to make this easier on yourself. So this is called the hero's journey. You may have heard of it. Has anybody here heard of the hero's journey? Yeah, good job, literacy. But so the premise of it is, you start at the top, and then you go to the bottom, and then you go back up to the top. And so basically the premise of the story is the main character has a change in perspective. So you start off, everything is normal, and then you leave your comfort zone, and then you go down into the strange. In like Lord of the Rings, this is Frodo's journey. This is going through the mines of Moria. And you're down there, and at the very bottom is, I've seen it called Ordeal, Death, and Rebirth. I've also seen it called Meeting the Goddess, which is the moment where everything changes. And the protagonist is forever different. And that is a moment of whimsy, I believe, not only for the protagonist, but for the audience if it's done correctly. Because you're on this journey, if you're doing your writing well, you're on the journey with the protagonist. You are empathizing with the protagonist, and you have that moment of, oh, this is what I need to be to solve my problem. I wasn't what I needed to be before, but now I can go back to the regular world, changed and capable. And so that, I think, is a really cool tool. And there's like tons of videos about this on YouTube where it'll go through like a great movie, and then it'll be like, these are the things that they did to make this movie like a hero's journey. Almost every movie is the hero's journey. The Matrix is a hero's journey, like word for word, point for point, hero's journey. So yeah, check it out. And I it's not a talk by me if I don't bring this one up. Yeah. This is like the quintessential like whimsical twisty journey of like character development. Because yeah, the plot is super straightforward in Undertale. I don't know if anybody doesn't know about it. The premise is you're a human, you fell into a hole, and you have to get out of the hole. But there's monsters in the way, and you can either choose to hurt them or you can choose to not hurt them. And that's the whole game. But it's the characters that make it so engaging, because you're never quite sure, you haven't quite pinned down what anyone's intentions are yet. You're alone in this weird world, and things are attacking you, so you don't quite know. And so this is the second character you meet in the game. Her name is Toriel, and she is blocking your way. And she's kind of like, she's the tutorial, so she's like taught you how to like, engage with the mechanics of the fighting. And she's taught you that you have to, whittle someone's health down before you can spare them and they can leave. And so you're doing that, like she's a Pokemon or something. And then suddenly, something happens. And you just do ludicrous damage. Just absolutely ludicrous damage. And she dies. And so that's the first moment of like, it's not necessarily whimsy, but like it's something very, very close. It's like the negative side of whimsy, which I think is fascinating. And then they keep doing it with every single character you meet. Like there's this skeleton, and he's kind of like hokey but menacing, and you fight him. Then he's like, okay, I'm done fighting you now, goodbye. And then you go on a date. And I'm not sure what the egg is for, but I don't know. And it's Wednesday. And then you meet another character, and she's super, super menacing. And then you go to her house and you cook. You're like, it's the dumbest like experience of your life. And then there's other things that happen. which you don't expect. But yeah, so I want to give you guys an example, something that I have done that I feel kind of encapsulates this. So like I'm not just talking out of my rear end. So this is the first iteration of my game's main enemy, the slug. There's not a lot to it. You may note something is missing. Some key design element is missing. And my husband's like, what if you put googly eyes on it? And I was like, yes! A million times better. Yes, it's like, okay, you know what? Now we're cooking. Because I put them on it, and I showed it to my husband, and he's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah. And that feeling, you're like, that's it. That is it. And so in our game, the main mechanic is physics. You can pick up and throw any object. That was the point of that whole prop. I brought it here just for that. And so, yeah, you can see that they jump at you, and they stick to you, and then you pick them up, and then you can use your telekinesis to throw them around, and they splat on any hard surface. So they're actually, like, it's funny because they're not super menacing one-on-one, but they can actually become a huge problem. Also, so yeah, like this is like a couple of them, attacking at the same time. I'm holding my own, but only by doing something really stupid, which I'll explain in 1 second. So when we were making the game, we wanted to have a healing mechanic. So you have something in your hand with the telekinesis, you press C to consume it, and it heals you. And so the question was, what happens with like demons or furniture? What happens if you eat one of those? And I was like, I just, on my computer screen, on like the health, like it was like 1, 2, 3, like health refill. I'm like, I put a negative sign in front of the 1. So you can absolutely eat them. And it's a legitimate strategy in the game of just like, I'm being overwhelmed. Gobble, 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 gobble. I mean, it can also go poorly if you eat too many, and there was too many, and yeah, so that's the mechanical part of their like whimsy. There's also a section in the first act of the game where you pick up this bow, and then a giant one, and it's the easiest boss fight. I don't actually show you the whole boss fight. As soon as you pick up the giant slug, the fight ends and the door opens. And like there's like boss music and everything, and it's like and it's the dumbest boss fight in history, and I love it so much. Yeah, that guy. And then you can put that in your inventory, and then you can pull them out and you can give it to people, and they're like, ah! Or you could eat it, and it basically kills you instantly. So it's like that's the sort of thing where it's like every step of the way, you're like, how can I make this even dumber than it was before? But yeah, so that's more or less my talk of like how you can add whimsy to your jam games this weekend. Is like whenever you're making up a mechanic, like you're talking to that guy Simon about his castles, like, okay, I've got this block over here, I've got this block over here. And one great way to make Simon's life easier is, how can I just make it so these 2 blocks interact? Because then you can throw out a bunch of other blocks that you would have had, because those 2 are now fun. So it's like, just make your life easier and use fewer stuff, but make it funny, is my advice. Happy jamming.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca. All right. Our next speaker, our penultimate speaker, Sarah, is a Winnipeg-based video game producer who has been in the industry for almost 10 years. Titles she's worked on include FIFA 21, Homeworld 3, and Age of Empires 4. Prior to games, Sarah was in marketing and worked on campaigns with companies such as Costco and Staples. Outside of games, Sarah enjoys dance, crochet, and playing with her 1-year-old pup. Welcome, Sarah. You can flip this on, or you can just hold it.
I think it will. Sweet. Hello, hello. How is everyone doing? Good? Woo! Will that work? Is that close enough? Yeah? Cool. Okay. It's the first time I'm actually using something like this, so I feel kind of professional right now. Not gonna lie. All right. Game Jam. Love it. I love that I was asked to talk about this. Unfortunately, this is now the dry part of the talk, so sorry everyone. It's going to be a bunch of text about how to keep your projects and your game jam on track and as organized as you can. I think this would be a great topic for people who have never done a game jam before, because then you could be like, oh, I think I know what I can do now, and then you can start doing things. And if you haven't done it, or if you've done it before and you're a veteran, hopefully this is a bit of a refresher, or maybe you can take something out of it. I don't know. But when I first did my first game jam, gosh, it was like 8 years ago at the Global Game Jam. I wanted to be the project manager producer on it, and I got there and I was like, so what do I do? And I had no idea. So I wish I had all the knowledge that I know now to have helped me years ago, and hopefully this will help some of you. All right, so let's get to it. So just, again, a little quick brief intro about who I am. So you've heard of some of the games that I've worked on. It was a really fun time working for companies like EA or Relic. I've worked on indie, console, mobile, AAA games all across the board. I'm originally from Toronto. I moved to Vancouver to get into video games, and that was a really fun time in tech. And now I'm here. I know, you're like, why? You can ask me why later. But let's just say my 1-year-old pup enjoys having a backyard. So, spoiler. And then before this, I was in marketing. So I did get a degree in business. And then I used some of that transferable skills to get into production. And then from there, I took a lot of project management-based courses. I've done my PMP, I've done my ACSPO, I'm an ACSM, and I'm currently working on my PMI, or ACP, PMI, or something like that. I should really know what I'm doing the exam on in like 3 months, but you know, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Yeah. So for all of you who are kind of new to video game development, this will be a really nice way to get yourself into it. For those who've seen this before or already know a little bit about game development, this is just going to be like our refresher 101. So in project management, the basic life cycle, you have 4 parts. You have the initiating, the planning, execution, and close. Now, there's a lot of text under each of them, but all you really have to know is at the beginning, initiating, that's where all the planning happens and all the good ideas come together. And then that's kind of where the planning part comes. So the initiating is where you kind of get the people, the money, what you want to do. You get them all together, then you go into the planning. You get all of the documentation together. You're like, yeah, we know what we're going to do. Execution, you start doing what you're supposed to do, and then you got your goals and your deadlines, and you have the producers running after you saying, hey, close out your JIRA tasks, and then you close out, which is launching of the game. Now, how does this work with game development? So first stage of game development is pre-production, and that's kind of where the initiating planning stage happens. So this is where like the GDD comes to light, the team roles and responsibilities. This is where marketing starts asking, you know, who are you trying to target? You get some timelines, you get some budgeting, and then you might even be beginning or getting to your prototyping or vertical slice. And so that's all happening in this first stage. Once you kind of get that all stamped and approved, you can move over to the production section or the implementation and execution part of project management. And so this is basically where a lot of projects live. It could be years while you're sitting in production. This is the most challenging part of development, and it actually can be the most costly too. This is where a lot of the times you see games saying, oh, actually we have to move the release date because, and so it's usually because there's things that happen during production, scope creep, things like that. Also, you'll be doing lots of play testing. This might be where you do like open beta, closed beta, depending on where you're going to launch. You might even do a pre-launch, maybe start working with marketing on a few of those little things here and there. But this is basically where that's going to happen. And then, of course, the close is the game release. So yay, you know, release day is here. You get to go and see your beautiful project out in the wild. A lot of these times people go down to what they call zero bug milestone. That's basically all critical bugs now down to 0. When I was at FIFA, it was like that was the time where everyone stayed back, because you're just like, whoa, we have to get FIFA down to 0 bugs? Is that even possible? And if anybody plays FIFA, you'll know that there's still quite a lot of bugs in there. But yes, so it's the producer's job to really get us down to all those critical bugs down to 0. And then the team celebrates. Maybe you'll have a wrap party. Maybe you'll have swag that you get from the company. And then again, us producers, archiving happens. And that's where you basically hand over any kind of documentation or anything that's owed to the publisher or the people who owns the IP, anything like that. All of that good stuff happens right at the end. Now there is another section to game dev, and everyone knows there's the live ops section, but in project management we don't really have that, and that's in another talk that I usually have. So if anyone has questions about that part, you can definitely let me know. I've been a live op producer for a while now, so I'm happy to talk about that. But what I want to move into more is now, how can this work for your game jam? So I know, lots of information all at once, especially if you never really heard a lot about this. So when we're talking about pre-production, let's think of it as like the before or the beginning of your jam, right? Maybe you want to start figuring out the roles and responsibilities. Who's going to do what? Who's going to code? Who's going to make art? Does somebody want to put on the hat as a project manager? These are all the things that you kind of want to figure out with the team. Depending on how big and how small. And also, if you are doing it online, for example, how are you going to communicate with each other? Are you going to set up maybe a Discord chat? Are you going to do it over Slack or something like that? I don't know why, but maybe email. That could be a thing. So you might want to start setting up some repos. You might want to start setting up a project board. You could use, there's tons of free things available if you want, where you could start putting together tasks. You could even start simple things like a logo or the credit screen or the start menu. Those are things that a lot of games are supposed to have, are going to have. And so you can already start pre-populating all of those boards while you're starting to talk about what you want to do with the team. And then you get to the main part, which is the goal of the game. And if anyone knows MVP? Yeah? What is it? There is that, which is sometimes me. Yeah! The minimum viable product. And so that's basically what you want to get to. It's a simple idea. It's like you could take the greatest, most amazing idea that you have, and then just kind of simplify it. Just kind of pare it down to maybe 1 or 2 special mechanics. Maybe focus on specific things about it that will say, yes, the player can understand what my game is in this one little section, in this MVP. And so that's kind of what you want to do at the very beginning. Any other ideas doesn't mean they're bad. You could put them in the backlog. Since you've already set up your board, you can start putting things down so that once you have an MVP done, then you can start working from those in the backlog. So by the end of pre-production, you should have an idea of the core game and main mechanic, high-level breakdown of what everyone is doing, and then also a backlog. So what next? Now you have your production phase. And so during the game jam, things that you probably want to do is communicate as much as you can, constant check-ins. I've heard of people doing like hourlies, they kind of check in with the team, see what they're doing, see what's missing. You might want to check the boards if you have someone who has the project manager hat on, and they're kind of moving tasks around and asking people, hey, is this in? Did this get checked in? Then you can check that just to make sure you know where you're at. And then always check the scope and time. I mean, I am a producer, so that's constantly what I'm doing all the time, just making sure, are we on track? Do we have the right features in? If not, red flags. I do this constantly with my team. If we know we're going to hit up a deadline, if we have a milestone, a gate, a review that's coming up, I always ask them way before then, hey, what are your red flags? Anything that you want to bring up that you think won't make it for this particular time. Because then you can talk about what you could do next. Do we have to cut it? Do we have to refine the feature? Do we have to try and do something else or pivot? you want to make sure whatever you align with everybody, that you have enough time to do it. So red flags are good before the actual deadline, not like the hour before, maybe like few hours before then, so you have the time to talk about it. And then the last one, so I got a few of these ideas from one of my friends who he's a game director, and he's done a ton of game jams as well. Hydrate. He was like, you need to make sure that you hydrate. You need to make sure that you are taking breaks, that you're taking the time. I know sometimes it could be exciting, or you're really, interested in what you're doing, and your head's down, and you don't even realize how long it's been since the last time you put, some kind of water or anything in you. You might want to make sure that someone is there poking, being like, hey, don't forget water, or any kind of food or anything like that. So hydration, please. And then last, of course, is the launch release. So this is at the end or the last stretch of the game jam. And so this is where you definitely want to be doing bug testing, play testing if you can, focusing on polishing the game. And so if this person who wants to take on the project management role wants to go around and like tell people, okay, you know what, now is not the time for us to start working on a new feature. Maybe not a really good idea to start doing that right now. Let's start polishing and making things look really good. Final communication, so wrapping up any tasks, uploading and distributing on websites. So if there's anything, documentation that you have to do as well, do make sure you keep a little bit of time at the end to make that, to get that all out. And then party. Got to party. If it's the end of a release, you have to do that as game developers. It's in our it's in our right. Perfect. So I'm just going to end this off with some tips and recommendations. So keep it simple. I know it's really common thing to say to everyone, but when you actually start getting into it and you start brainstorming and everyone has all these really cool ideas, it's really easy to start with something that's really small and then getting to something really big. So keep in mind, starting small, stick to the vision. A lot of times for game designers, for example, the vision and the pillars are what they kind of live and breathe, right? If you're not following the vision, if you're not following the pillars, then you're going to go off rails, you're going to go this way, you're going to go that way. It's really hard to stay on task and on goal. So really stick to that vision. Learn something. This is supposed to be really fun. Do something you've never done. Do a role you want to do. If you have something that you're really interested in, even if you don't have a lot of experience, but you kind of know what you want to get at, it would be really cool to take that on. And game jams are a fun time to actually try and do something cool. For those who are interested, time boxing, work back plans, and dependencies. If you want to try and wrap your mind around that. Thinking about, okay, well, if we have to get done at 8 o'clock at this time, it's going to take me 2 hours to do this, then work back from there to figure out when you actually need to have certain deadlines. Time boxing is really good too. So for example, when you're going to start brainstorming your ideas, you could say, okay, we're only going to do this for 2 hours and that's it. And after 2 hours, we're just going to call it, this is the idea, and then we're going to move forward with that. And then dependencies, of course, is just really good to see, oh, art has to be finished here first, and then it has to go to code. Just understanding that workflow makes things a little bit more smoother for you at the end. And support each other and have fun. That's really everything that I had.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. We're almost done here. But before that, we have one last speaker. Introducing Tak, manga creator, learning game dev, UX UI designer, and co-founder at Sadie, originally from Kyoto, Japan. Welcome, Tak. You can either put that on or speak into it.
Cool. Yeah, one more speaker and you're free, so bear with me here. So, I'm going to talk about the importance of finishing the game today. So the title is Finish Making Your Game No Matter How Crappy It Is. And then I want to give you a quick disclaimer. I showed it I had practiced the talk beforehand with my business partner, Justin, and he told me that should you say crappy for this kind of presentation? The verbiage itself is a little bit harsh. And I want to just say that like this is not to trash your game saying that's crappy or anything like that. And this is just to address the general idea of like your game you're not happy with the game, or I have made whole tons of crappy games as well. So I just want to make sure that you're not offended by this, so you know. So let's get started. As June introduced me, I am TAC Uneta, or I go by the name Q Uneta when I draw something or make something. I'm a manga creator. I'm a comic artist, learning game dev. I am a UX UI designer in the city, as I said, with my business partner. It's called Sadie, and I am originally from Kyoto, Japan, where the Nintendo headquarters is. I am very proud of that. Also, I had a privilege to draw this piece, and I want to give a quick shout out to Danielle for giving me almost complete freedom on this piece, just drawing it. I had lots of fun drawing this, and then this is one of my favorite pieces. So thank you, Danielle. All right, so I am going to talk about these. Well, these are my milestones today about my talk. One is 30 circle exercise. Another is why finishing is important. And then another is stacking up the facts. So this year, I at least try to join one game jam every month. I'm not successful all the time because life gets in the way, but I try, and then I successfully finish and submit. And this is the big theme of my talk again. So every time I join the game jam, my primary goal is always to finish and submit. It's sometimes very tough, but I have been managing to do that this year. Every time I try to do this, finish and submit, every time I join the game jam, I always think of this one particular creative exercise I've done during the COVID when I started getting serious about learning game dev. And that exercise itself is the 30 circle exercise. Have you ever heard of it? No? Good, because it has a little gimmick to it. Good, very good. So 30 circle exercise, I think it's a pretty common exercise among like creative agencies and design studios and stuff like that. And then I actually came across this one blog post about that. So I want to introduce you to this. So how it goes is pretty simple. You prepare a sheet of paper with 30 circles on it, and then you start the timer for 3 minutes, and then get drawing, and see how many circles you can fill in. And there are a couple of rules, right? So there are rules. Your main purpose is to fill in as many circles as possible. Right? Simple. And then you can do whatever you want, whatever the heck you want, to each circle, but every circle has to be distinct and unique. Right? So you can't have duplicates. And again, you have 3 minutes. And I've seen the couple different variants that like you do that in 1 minute, or 2 minutes, or teams, or pair, or a couple different versions of it. But the original one I came across was actually the 3 minutes, and I did solo. So that's that. And then first time I found out this exercise, I thought like, hey, drawing is kind of my thing, like I know how to do this. So I just jumped in. But again, like if you think about it, you have 30 circles to fill in, 3 minutes, meaning like you have 5 or maybe 6 seconds each on each circle. It's not a lot of time. So how I did first time is like this. Pretty straightforward, right? My favorite is donut right there, actually. Like I thought it's pretty smart. Oh, like I can make a hole in the circle and make it long. But this is how I did, and then I'm pretty happy with it. I think I got pretty creative with this, but as you can see, I was not able to fill all the 30 circles. Again, and then I was thinking that like maybe like I was drawing the basketball or Saturn or maybe like a baseball. I was thinking maybe there's a better way to do this, or I was I thought that I'm doing it maybe something wrong. So once I'm finished with this version, I did it again, like this. Thank you for laughing at that. Appreciate that. Right. I appreciate that awe too. And well, I know what you're thinking right now. Here we go. Right? I showed it to my wife, and then she immediately said, "It's cheating." And I said, "Kinda." Well, it is, but I have a little bit deeper thing than that. So what I did between the first round and second round is shift the mentality a little bit. What I did was I recalibrated my purpose, because remember, like, the main purpose is to fill as many circles as possible, not drawing as pretty as possible, right? And the second thing is I took full advantage of very ambiguous but flexible rule set. It says I can do whatever I want, so it doesn't say that I can't draw in numbers, right? Technically. And this is the part that my wife said this is cheating. And then the third is I strategized based on the given limitations. Meaning that I have 3 minutes, I have 30 circles to fill in. What do? So I gave up, or I dedicated 30 seconds of my time to 28 circles, and I just be done with it. And then dedicated the remaining 2.5 minutes to only 2 circles, so I can make something prettier and impressive within 3 minutes. And then the reason I'm talking about this is that this mentality here is very, very similar to the mentality that whenever I'm joining the game jam, right? So in jams, think about it. If you ever participated in a jam, you have to be as creative as possible under very, very tight limitations. Usually like 48 hours or maybe 5 days or something. Very short amount of time you have to make a video game. And then you have to fight this ego in order to finish your game. Ego being my case, that I don't want to be judged by those like 3 minutes very scrappy, like very janky drawing. I know I can draw better, but that's the result, so I have to live with it. But that's not the priority here. I have to fill in all the circles, and think about what I can do with those circles. And the most important aspect of the game jam is that you have to decide what to keep and what to let go. So that's what I did, basically. Like, I just ditched all the 28 circles and I focused on the 2 circles. That's what I decided to preserve. And again, to reiterate, to finish and submit your game, I must be thinking like the second round, not like first round. So here's a mini takeaway of this part of the talk, that in order to submit the jam game, you have to set a clear goal, an achievable goal, I would say, and then review what you're given and strategize with them. So what are you given? Like team members, resources, and maybe the time limits and stuff like that. You have to strategize with them, and then be decisive and commit, and then just stick with what you decided. So why am I talking about this? Why am I saying like all the probably I said like finish and submit like 7 times now, or maybe more by now. Why am I talking about that, and why is it important? And this is what I found. I cannot speak properly now, right? This is what I found out. Finishing makes what you're capable of a fact. It's unchangeable. Finishing makes what you're capable, what you can, a fact. And then stacking those facts grows into your business, grows into your confidence eventually. Let's look at it like this. So there's a game, finished game, but crappy. And then there's another game, beautiful looking, gorgeous game, but unfinished. The former, you can say, I can make a game. I can make a game. But the latter, I think at best you can say is I could make a game. It's a potential, not the fact. The former, that's a fact that you can make a game, but crappy. Just not enough. There are a lot of room to improve, but it's a fact. It's something you can make. Let's say that all those tiny facts, even though the game is not that great, if you keep stacking the fact, and then like imagine like what a big pile of confidence you can create down the road. Or opposite is, imagine those little project that you didn't finish and then keep piling up. What kind of pile you're going to make? What kind of disappointing pile are you going to make? Right? So that's why I say finish making your game, no matter how crappy it is, no matter how you're unsatisfied with it, make it, finish it, and then ship it, and let people play, and then just get feedback and get better at it. Again, I kept joining Game Jam. I mean, I have been joining Game Jam this year every month almost, and then I kept stacking those facts. All those screenshots earlier are actually all the games that I made. I kept stacking those facts. I keep building the pile of confidence this year. And I started noticing something in me. I used to think like this whenever I joined the Game Jam. How do I finish my game? How do I finish making my game within X amount of time? And then we're about to jump in the Game Jam right now, so like you might be thinking the same thing right now. And I think it's pretty natural. I think it's pretty fair to think this way. But I started thinking like maybe like last 2 jams or so, I started thinking like this. How do I make a better game within X amount of time? Maybe slight change, but to me it's very significant difference. It means that I know how the Game Jam goes, I know how hard it is, I know how to plan better, I know how to fight that ego or perfectionist of me, or I know how to decide. All those things allow me to worry more about the quality of the game, or extra room in my mind, allow me to have that little bit more, allow me to have more confidence to create the video game, finish it, and then that is something that is that allows me to say that I can make a video game at last. Finally, I started finally saying I make a video game last couple months, because now I'm confident enough to say that. I don't make good games, but but I make something. So we are about to jump into the Game Jam, and I'm just hoping that at the end of the Game Jam, everybody's confident, everybody finish and submit the game, and then we all say that I can make a video game. Thank you. Also, quick reference. This is the top article is the original article that I came across when I was doing the 30 circle. I was talking to when I was talking about the 30 circle exercise. This IDEO is a company, the global design company that introduces a lot of like exercise like this. So I recommend checking it out. And also the 30 circle test by Lazy Dev. I try to learn Pico 8 through his tutorial. His name is Christian, and he's a game instructor in Germany, I think. And his tutorial is great. And then he talks about he talks more in depth part of the 30 circle test, 30 circle exam. So please check it out. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
That's okay. Okay. Well, and with that, we've come to the end of our speaker evening. Thank you so much for coming out, everyone. As is kind of traditional with these speaker evenings, we will now announce the theme for the Extra Life Game Jam. If I could get a drum roll on the laps. The theme for Extra Life Jam is Extra Life. Woo! Feel free to use it or not. It's a jumping off point. I'm very excited to see what you all make this weekend. If as you're leaving today, going to a car, going to a bus stop, there is the Exchange District Patrol that can help you get where you're going safely. So if you think you might want to make use of that, you can talk to Rhubarb or me or Dan. We'll help get you connected with those people. I feel like there was one other thing that I was going to say, but I don't remember what it was. Oh, you should donate. Way back up here. Where were we? Slideshow. QR code on the screen. Donate to a good cause. If you're jamming this weekend, we'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. If you're not jamming this weekend, maybe we'll see you for the showcase 6 p.m. on Sunday. Dan is looking like he wants to say one thing, so I'm going to let him do that.
I also wanted to recognize all the people behind the scenes that contribute to making this possible. I've been working with June for quite a long time on jams and stuff. I'm very grateful to work with them. And then also we have a group of people that meet once every 2 weeks where we talk about what our plans are. Derek is here. It also includes Annie. Sasha at the back is also part of that sort of cohort. So the Game Collective is more than the people that you might see. There's people behind the scenes, and I'm also grateful to New Media Manitoba, Rob, and then John and everyone else that contributed. Mark is behind the computers over there. And then people coming, right? I enjoy doing this. It's very fulfilling for me, but if there's not people that can sort of get value out of the stuff that we're doing, it's for naught. So thank you everyone for coming, and hope to see many of you on Saturday and Sunday.
All right. Thanks for coming out, everyone. Have a good night. Oh.
Do you want to make a note about entrance for tomorrow?
Oh.
Tomorrow the doors are closed.
Okay. Sure. 1 second, everyone.
Sorry.
One last thing.
Thank you for that. Sorry. Saturday, Sunday, the main entrance doors will be closed. So there are two ways to get in. Either you can do the 300 main entrance. You can do the Winnipeg Scare entrance. So the city entrance is more flexible compared to 201 entrance. There's also the sidewalk that you can take from the back alley from 201 entrance. So you come downstairs, you can see it outside right to your right. Yeah, right, and then right. Anyways, so there are 3 entry points on Saturday. And then when we are getting out of here, I will help with that as well. If anybody needs Downtown Safety Exchange Patrol number, I have it. Otherwise, have a great night.